Hey listeners, it's Paul Andriola here. Why not join our community at Small Cap Discoveries, where we offer our members direct access to some of the best microcap investment opportunities available. Our members are getting access to premium microcap financings, research reports, and direct access to management. Sign up today at www.smallcapdiscoveries.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. Today on our call, we have the CEO, Jeremy Sobotta from Perimeter Medical Imaging. Perimeter trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol PINK or PINK, and on the OTC under PYNKF. The company currently trades at $1.37 with roughly 65 million shares outstanding, or about an $88 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andriola.
Thanks a lot, Trevor. Yes, very happy to have Jeremy with us today. Perimeter Medical Imaging, medical diagnostic company, I guess we can say, or an imaging company. Really interested in seeing how you guys are doing and getting to know a little bit more about the business. We did speak with someone from the company a couple months ago, but great to have you here to present to our audience and tell us all about the business. So Jeremy, thank you for joining us today, and you've got a presentation, so I'm just going to hand it over to you and let you start your presentation.
All right, great. Thanks, Paul and Trevor. We're excited to be here and sharing the story with you today. So as I dive in, I'll just do the obligatory. I will be making forward-looking statements and would direct you to our SEDAR filings for a complete discussion of the risks facing the organization. But as you said, Perimeter Medical Imaging AI, we're a medical technology company. I tend to call us an early stage medical device company, and we're driven to transform cancer surgery with a very unique combination of ultra high resolution and real-time advanced imaging tools. And we're using that combination of ultra high resolution and real time to address primarily an unmet medical need today that's called intraoperative margin assessment. And what that means is during a cancer surgery, what happens is the surgeon goes in, removes the tumor specimen from the patient, and then they need to send that tumor specimen to a pathology lab that today can take anywhere from as little as 2 days up to over a week to examine that specimen. And what the pathology lab looks for is any cancer in the outside 2 millimeters of that specimen, or cancer at the perimeter, hence the name Perimeter Medical Imaging. And if they find cancer at the perimeter, what that means is generally the risk of that cancer coming back for patients is significantly increased. So in the case of like a breast lumpectomy, the risk of cancer coming back doubles for that patient. In cases like prostate cancer surgery, that patient would go through a significant additional treatment of radiation and other adjuvant therapies. So a big opportunity to help the surgeons see that information in real time. And that's where Perimeter comes into play. We show the surgeon that outside 2 millimeters with a microscopic level of resolution so they can see if they have indeed achieved that cancer-free barrier of tissue that I was just talking about. Some key highlights for the company. So we're commercial stage. We went commercial with our flagship Perimeter S series middle of last year. We're off and running there. We've announced 4 separate surgeon installations, their facility installations with the S series platform. And we call it the Perimeter S series because it's the version of our technology that we plan to use in the surgery suite. So the operating room or operating theater, depending on the geography you're in. And our early users represent kind of exactly what we're trying to accomplish with this iteration of the technology. We're out there building key opinion leaders. We're really kind of focused on about 20% of the market with this version of the technology. And we have that 20% of the market today spanning from, standalone surgery centers, which is a fast growing, a new area of healthcare where the site of care is moving a lot more into the ambulatory setting. So Dr. Carpenter in Southern California is our surgery center user so far. And then we're in an academic institution that, as fellows and residents learn how to practice or learn how to perform breast cancer surgery. They learn on this technology in institutions like that. And then the other end of the spectrum, we're in a handful of HCA facilities where it's a for-profit hospital system that is really using our technology to compete for patients and trying to shift patient population into their facilities. So a good mixture so far. And in our last Q3 earnings call, we announced that we have over 11 active evaluations taking place. So the pipeline is heating up, and that's a great leading indicator for what we expect to close out the year and to get 2023 off to a start with. Next for Perimeter's technology is what we call our B series. And this is effectively the imaging technology with artificial intelligence that overlays that image. So this is really when we open up the commercial net and move from that 20% of the market to 100% of the market. Really excited about the initial performance of the algorithm. The FDA granted this technology a breakthrough device designation. So, great tailwinds with the FDA from a regulation perspective and getting in front of them to make sure we can take the fastest, least burdensome path to market with this technology. And we're actively in a clinical validation study on that. So, this is the big pivotal study that's collecting the data to support a marketing application to the FDA down the road. So, the people behind Perimeter, we're all management team is extensive medical devices individuals. I spent my whole career with medical devices. A lot of that came with a company called Stryker, where I was part of deploying over $4 billion in capital, buying companies just like Perimeter. And that's kind of what brought me to Perimeter in 2019 was, I had just completed a couple of very adjacent breast cancer technology acquisitions, a company that did fluorescence breast imaging. Your audience is probably familiar with Novadak, and then another company called Invuity. And right on the back of those two, as we were really trying to plant our flag in the women's health space, our sales reps and our customers were constantly saying to me, you need to buy technology that solves intraoperative margin assessment. Literally, one of our key opinion leaders calls it the holy grail of breast lumpectomy surgeries. There is a big problem that surgeons want to solve for improved patient outcomes, and payers have a lot of financial incentives to solve the problem. So back then, didn't like any of the names I was looking at from a diligence perspective, but really liked the space. And then fast forward several years later, when the Perimeter opportunity came across my desk, you didn't have to sell me on solving margin assessment the margin assessment problem. It was just, could Perimeter do it? And I believe that we're doing it in a great way so far. So as we think beyond the initial addressable market that we're in today, we're really focused on breast cancer surgery today because there's a lot of obvious, it's our largest, most profitable market. But as we think beyond, we see a $3.7 billion total addressable market in other tissue types and, expanding geographically. Today we're only cleared in the US. And lastly, we're commercializing with a strong balance sheet. So we completed a private placement led by Social Capital in January this year, exited Q3 with just over $40 million in cash and cash equivalents on the balance sheet, and burning around the equivalent of $5 million a quarter today. So, feeling really well bolstered by strong capital as we're accelerating our commercial efforts and getting through that clinical validation on the AI. So just to frame the problem a little bit better. Oh, sorry, I was behind here on slides there. So there's the highlight slide. And then to frame the problem a little bit better, so breast cancer is the most common cancer in the world. Unfortunately, today, 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. And about, just over 300,000 of those women happen in the US, where we're actively cleared for commercialization efforts. And today, about 2/3 of those women elect to have breast conserving surgery. So you could either, go for a full mastectomy where the surgeon would take everything, or you can do a breast conserving surgery, which improves, your cosmetic outcomes, improves post-operative sensation and those things, and really just actually today, most of the recent data suggests that breast conserving surgery or lumpectomies with postoperative radiation has a better survivorship rate than mastectomies. So a lot of reasons to have a breast conserving surgery. Now, one of the risks with that is this margin assessment risk that we talked about. So the surgeon would go in, remove the cancerous lump, and then again, they send that lump to a pathology lab that can take up to over a week to examine that. And if they find a positive margin, again, the risk of that cancer coming back in the same breast doubles. So instead of accepting that risk, if the surgeon finds a positive margin, they'll call that patient back for another operation. And those patients who come back for another operation cost on average $16,000 in additional treatment costs. So, the grand mean of patient callbacks is somewhere around 20 to 25%. So effectively, you have 1 in 4 patients coming back for a $16,000 cost, equating to $4,000 per patient in potentially avoidable reoperation costs. So, that's just the hard dollars and cents. Then those second operations come at a nearly 50% complication rate. So, think things like, poor pain, increased pain management, poor cosmetic outcomes from additional tissue being removed, not to mention the emotional trauma of that patient always questioning whether the surgeon removed all the cancer for the rest of her life. And finally, there's a lot of research being done on financial toxicity to the patient. So, not only did I have to take time away from work to go for the first operation, but now I need to go for at least, probably 1 more, potentially 2 more operations. And all of that is holding up the radiation and chemo and follow-on treatment that I need to do downstream from a path of care. So lots of opportunity to bring that information into the OR so we can make sure it gets done right the first time. So how we do that, here's kind of a double click on the workflow. So today's standard of care is what you see at the top of the slide here. And what pathology is looking for is, this dark purple circle you see here at the perimeter of the tissue. So that dark purple circle, that's cancer at the edge. In today's world, that patient is coming back for another $16,000 operation. They might come back for a full mastectomy after that, which is obviously even more cost and poor outcomes generally for the patient. Future state with Perimeter's technology, in the OR, we put our machine, and in 10 to 15 minutes, the surgeon would have effectively the same information. So this is the same piece of tissue between, what you would see in pathology and what you would see with our technology. Surgeon can see, oh, I've got DCIS right at the edge of that tissue. I need to go back in and take more tissue. So they, instead of sewing the patient up, sending her home, waiting a week to find out she needs to take more tissue, she can do it right away in the OR in the first operation. So a big opportunity. And then after going in and removing more tissue, they can scan that to make sure it is indeed a clear margin. So, just a ton more information when the surgeon needs it in real time. So the technology platforms, we are a razor blade business model. So you can see here on the left hand of the slide, that's the capital unit that we would place in the operating suite with the surgeon. And every single procedure requires the use of this tissue immobilizer. And if you think about it, you could equate our technology to like a copy machine in some sense, in that we're scanning from beneath the specimen, it's shooting light waves into the specimen, and as that bounces back, that's what generates the images for the surgeon to review. Well, when you're doing that on a microscopic level, that specimen cannot be moving around at all. Otherwise, it would really render the image useless for the surgeon. So this is where our specimen immobilizer comes into play. In a very gentle manner with diffused pressure, it immobilizes that specimen so the surgeon can get crystal clear information, enabling them to make the clinical decisions they need. And that's, our high margin, recurring, predictable revenue that just grows right along as that surgeon's procedure growth grows as well. Then from a new user onboarding perspective, this is a new modality for surgeons. So we're the only people in the market that, and we have intellectual property around the wide field OCT. So we need to onboard our new surgeons and get them comfortable with the images that they're reviewing. And this is where our Atlas image library comes into play. So we've been developing this technology since 2014. And we have amassed millions of images that we can give to surgeons. So if they're, for example, going into a surgery with a young patient that has dense breasts and was biopsy confirmed for having invasive ductal carcinoma, they can see just what that looks like in our Atlas image library. And then finally, I talked about our AI that's coming, and this is, again, an overlay. It's proprietary data that is trained on machine learning algorithm. We in-house label and classify all of those images for the training data set purposes. And it really, the goal of the AI is to speed up the review for the surgeon, make them more confident in their decision making, and get more accurate results because it highlights only those parts of the image that the surgeon needs to review in more detail. And speaking of the AI, so as I mentioned earlier, we're in kind of the clinical validation phase of that, the pivotal study side, and we're really excited about where we've come to get this into this clinical validation study. So we've done a lot of work to de-risk the performance in that study, and it's effectively been a three-part project we call our Atlas AI project. So part one, we received a grant from the state of Texas that helps fund the development of the AI. And we started working with a few institutions, MD Anderson, Baylor, and University of Texas in Texas to help collect images to train that algorithm. Finished part one with an algorithm that has a 94% accuracy metric. So in the AI world, it's called AUC. So 94% of the time, our algorithm can distinguish between suspicious and non-suspicious images, which is really industry best in class. If you look at some of the AI applications that are applied to mammography and some of the cancer detection areas, they're right around the 0.85 AUC metric. So feeling really strong about the algorithm performance on a standalone basis. And then as we recruited new surgeons and leading investigators to participate in the study, we put them through a reader study or an evaluation in part two that really they use our technology in a benchtop offline read to make sure that they're proficient enough with our technology that they could achieve the results we need to have a successful outcome from the pivotal study. So part two was really making sure that we've got the right investigators in the study that are proficient and effective with our technology. And now we're in part three where we're enrolling, you can see just around 330 patients into a clinical study that is designed to show our technology's performance against the standard of care in avoiding these reoperations. So we've got, our 8 initial sites up and running. We've actually received approval from the FDA to add a 9th site, which we're actively working on right now, and with the goal of really accelerating patient enrollment. So, it's been a difficult year for hospitals from a staffing and capacity perspective. I think if you're listening to medical device earnings calls or hospital earnings calls, they're all talking about OR nursing shortages, and that has been a delay for our clinical study for sure. So now we're adding a 9th site. Patient enrollment is picking up steam as staffing normalizes in our different sites, and we expect to be through patient enrollment first half of next year, submitting a marketing application to the FDA shortly after that. And then on to the business model. So, I mentioned some of the economics for the payers earlier. So just to quickly recap, so, there's about a 20 to 25% reoperation rate today. Those patients who come back cost $16,000 in additional treatment. So we're talking an average of $4,000 per patient in avoidable costs. And what we've gone to these early, S-series users with is, listen, we understand we're working through the pivotal study on the AI data, but you can pretty confidently bank on avoiding half of your reoperations. So cutting your $4,000 cost down to $2,000. Actually, what our early commercial users are seeing is, in the 90% reduction reoperation, so significantly better than what we really even anticipated. So, again, we create $2,000 with this 50% reduction mark, and hospital will split that with you 50-50. So, the cost to acquire Perimeter's technology is $1,000, and then you net $1,000 of savings from avoiding, half of your reoperations. And, the early feedback from our commercial, negotiations and whatnot is we feel pretty strong about our ASP, and that's not really been too much of a sticking point as both surgeons and hospitals can see the value in better patient outcomes, and really potentially shifting patient population to what would be a women's health center of excellence with technology like ours. And as we kind of build that up to the addressable market, so the average volume institution is doing around 150 breast lumpectomies per year. And as we think about our commercialization strategy that I just mentioned, so today, we're in, call it, the top 500 hospitals that we're trying to market to, just a subset of the market. And that's about a $75 million market from the bottoms up view of customer by customer. Excuse me. And then the top down view of that on the bottom half of this slide is we're talking about 20% procedure share to get to that $60-70 million market. So that's really the market we're playing in with the S series. And as we move on to the B series, that's when we get into 100% of the market, and you're talking $200 million market just in the U.S. and $800 million beyond internationally. So. And again, so just to kind of recap how our go-to-market strategy. So today, we're not really focused on kind of the volume of installations. We want to make sure we're in early adopters that can be influential and reference sites as we look to expand the net once the AI is on the market. Active in the pivotal study that we're on the kind of the home stretch of patient enrollment for the pivotal study. I'll just use, you can see the institutions we're with here. I'll just mention a couple of our investigators. So West Cancer Center in Tennessee, our principal investigator there is the chair of the Coding and Reimbursement Committee for the American Society of Breast Surgeons. So great partner to have, familiar with the technology as we think about, CMS and Medicare coverage and coverage from the commercial payers. Definitely the kind of partner we want to have. And then at University of Wisconsin, we have the chair of the research committee for the American Society of Breast Surgeons. So great influential surgeons that can help get society approval with our technology after the study. And then, I mentioned the $3.7 billion TAM. So as we think about, stepping from S series to B series onto other tissue applications, you can see here what the rest of that pie looks like. So, breast, $800 million. We've got a number of opportunities to create value in some of these other tissue types. Obviously colorectal and prostate are high volume. And once again, positive margins and procedures like that result in additional radiation or additional chemotherapy for those patients. And then at the other end of the spectrum, in the case of like pancreatic cancer surgery, that's a procedure where the surgeon won't go back in to take more tissue. Basically, a negative margin for those patients triples the 12-month survivorship rate. So literally negative margins in pancreatic cancer is saving lives. So a ton of opportunity there. And then this green part of the pie, that's where we expand across the continuum of care. So, in interventional radiology, biopsy has to go through the same waiting period. So they'll take a biopsy from the patient, send it to pathology, wait a week, and then figure out what to do with that patient from there. We think we can give the radiologist information right away in real time to help speed up patient care and reduce that time to get into the OR. And then in pathology, which happens after the operation, today it's the gold standard, but they're really only, it's a sampling technique. So they're really only looking at about 16% of the margin when they do their analysis. So our value prop to pathologists is use our technology. You can quickly, right away, without destroying the tissue, see 100% of that margin, and then take your sample from the right 16%. And so that's where we're at. I'll open it up for questions.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jeremy. One question just came out the top of my head. So your procedure per procedure, it's $1,000. What's sort of your take? Like what's the gross margins on the, I guess the hardware installation and the per application?
Yeah, so we've gone with what we call a managed solution agreement to the hospital. So we don't charge them for that upfront capital. Effectively, you can think of it as an embedded lease through the purchases of that per procedure consumable. And I mean, you can see in our financials, we're north of 85% gross margins on that consumable. So the average volume institution is going to be cash positive in less than 12 months on that upfront installation. And then from there, we just get 85% gross margins on the single-use consumable.
Okay, perfect. I want to remind everybody, if you've got questions for Jeremy, please use the chat function and we'll ask that question for you. I mean, you mentioned a couple timelines. I really wanted to be clear. What the FDA approvals that you're hoping for? When do you hope to see an answer back from the FDA?
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for that. So we're enrolling patients in the study today. Expect to be through those patients first half of next year. So just with the variability we're seeing in enrollment rates, it's a little bit of a broad spectrum there. And once a patient enrollment is done, then we've got about 2 months of data analysis. We'll have headline data so people can kind of price in the likelihood of the FDA approval. And then we think we strongly believe we'll get a de novo application path to approval or to clearance. And that's anywhere from that's around a 5-month average review time. So call it finish patients, call it Q2 next year. Then Q3 we submit the application, and late 24, early 25 on the market.
Gotcha. I mean, supposing everything's successful, how do you market a product like this?
Yeah, I think, what's unique about this technology is there's a lot of different stakeholders that it benefits. And one thing, I briefly alluded to some of the labor issues that hospitals have been having, but what has happened with all the supply chain challenges, they've really really structured new technology in that it has to be good for kind of everybody in the hospital. And this is where we believe that we've got a unique solution here. So first and foremost, patients obviously can get behind only needing one surgery, and the confidence that surgery was complete is a big win for them. Then our kind of key champion in the hospital is the breast surgeon. So these are people that care deeply about their patients. They want to get it done right the first time, but they also want to grow their practice. So having new cutting edge technology can help them market to the patients directly or to referring physicians and try to drive their practice. Then secondarily, I mentioned how we can improve pathology. So they're still a key part of this workflow. We're not there to replace pathology in any way. And actually, we can make them more efficient. So now you've got 2 people in 2 different budgets within the hospital that are both saying, yeah, we want to get this technology. And then as ultimately, the new technology today cannot be implemented into the healthcare system without making economic sense. So it has to provide value. And this is where we really benefit the payers, because we're taking a $4,000 cost today and potentially avoiding all of it and only charging you $1,000 to do it. So as particularly in the US market, as hospitals move more towards value-based care and less fee for service, more pay for outcomes, that's a big tailwind for us in the US market. And then internationally, in your single payer environment, socialized systems, it's a straight obvious answer for them.
Mhm. Now, earlier you touched on the fact that you're burning about $5 million a quarter right now. You've got $40 million in cash on the balance sheet. My math, does this mean you run out of money before you get the results? If so, are you going to be going back to market, do you think?
Oh, it won't be before we get the results. So we've got about
Right,
eight
right.
quarters.
Right.
Yeah, 8 quarters on the balance sheet now. But yeah, so definitely we'll use kind of that catalyst as optimizing for the cost of capital. So we've kind of, again, with the S series, we've gone to the commercial market with a stripped down version of a sales organization, getting the key opinion leaders, getting the reference sites ready so that when the AI comes, we're ready to start building that commercial organization and attacking the other 80% of the market. And so that's where we'll kind of keep an eye on cost of capital. We definitely want to become a NASDAQ story at some point. So as we're ready for the uplisting, thinking about the right timing for getting back to market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. You mentioned Social Capital as an investor. Maybe give us an idea. What's the insider ownership percentage, and then any other notable investors that are a part of Perimeter?
Yeah. So, well, Social, if you include them on the insider, that they're over 30 on their own. Between management and the board, we're probably approaching 10% at this point. We've got some insider buying recently, and those are really the major notable shareholders. I think we've got a handful of other institutions that are under the threshold, but they're kind of small cap healthcare institutions that are part of the story as well.
You touched a little bit on the management team, but maybe tell us a little bit about the board of directors.
Yep, definitely. So, kind of a good representation across clinical expertise, commercial expertise, and capital markets. So our chair is a woman named Suzanne Foster, who is now the president of Beckman Coulter, which is a diagnostics company, life sciences, but has been with us for some time. Grew up in Medtronic and was part of their transformative solutions business. So again, right in the same call point, surgical sales, and has been very successful getting new technology into that call point. People may be familiar with Dr. Tony Holler, who was the chair of ID Biomedical and their went to GSK. Aaron Davidson was with HIG Biohealth, was the CFO of Profound Medical. So, that was big investor in Novadac, who was the breast fluorescence imaging acquisition that I talked about before. Maybe Ian Mortimer with Xenon Pharma there in Burnaby, is a NASDAQ listed company, lots of capital raising experience behind him as well. So really couldn't be happier with the board we've got.
Now, Jeremy, you're based in Dallas. The business is really sort of US centric in terms of the market and everything. How does a company like this end up on the TSX Venture Exchange?
Yeah, certainly. Well, we started in Toronto. I was actually the first US employee. So for several years, we were just an R&D company in Toronto, and we spun out of a technology incubator there. It just so happens that Toronto Waterloo has a really robust cluster of biophotonics expertise, and that's how they kind of landed on using this light-based technology to solve this problem. And so, Roadmap Capital was kind of the venture funding that supported Perimeter from its kind of seed, friends and family stage through to the Toronto Venture Exchange. And we got on there with a reverse merger. So did an RTO with a shell called New World Resource Corp, who is out of Vancouver there as well. And that for me, as a again, you said US centric, I maybe was a little bit hesitant of the RTO path just from some of the cannabis war stories, but I can't say enough about the shareholders we acquired through the shell. They've been, they all participated in the concurrent financing we did at the time of the RTO. They've been extremely supportive since, and I think we've got a great group of long-term patient shareholders through that shell.
Gotcha. I've got a couple questions that came in. If you don't mind, I'll ask. I've got one that, well, okay. So one question, I think we did cover it, but maybe answer it again. What percentage of patients require second surgery when it comes to breast cancer?
Yeah, so it's a broad range depending on the institution or standard of care. So we've seen as low as 10% in kind of best in class in the world, as high as over 50% in some locations. Actually, British Columbia has a pretty poor, north of 40% rate as well. So, but that said, the grand mean is about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 patients coming back, 20 to 25%. And that's a pretty widely studied metric. Obviously, with rates like that, people really care about trying to improve it. So, you can see a lot of different publications that substantiate that.
Now, here's a tricky question. I mean, Canada and US has a different, obviously a different healthcare system. Are the percentages any different in Canada?
Yeah, they generally are on the higher end
Right.
in most of the Canadian markets. Yeah, so and I think some of that is just sheer volume. So some of the people that are achieving 10%, they're in places like Mayo Clinic and some of those that are doing a ton of procedures. So you get pretty good when you're doing a lot. And then some of those have just a lot more resources to deploy to the problem.
Gotcha. We have another question here. It says, hopefully you can answer this. Can you explain the October 11th disclosure of the distribution in kind of an aggregate of 14.7 million common shares by limited partnerships?
Yeah, so that was the Roadmap Capital Fund that I just alluded to earlier. So Roadmap was a multifamily office, single purpose limited partnership. And so, through the October 11th disclosure was effectively distributing the shares from Roadmap custody to its limited partners. Now that said, we have actually many of those limited partners were individual shareholders as well and have been participating all along. For me, it was a great opportunity to kind of connect directly with the LPs and really establish that relationship from that perspective instead of going through Roadmap. So,
gotcha. And speaking of investors, you're a medical device company listed up here in Canada, as opposed to NASDAQ, where I think a lot of life science companies are. Their goal is to list there. What is the current investor appetite? What does it look like? What's the interest level for a company like yours up here in Canada?
Yeah, I think one good thing, and let me say I've acquired a handful of medical device companies in Canada, and one thing I would say is you're exactly right. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of fish in the sea from a med tech perspective. So I think that gives us a good opportunity to kind of be a shining star within the space in Canada, definitely. I'm actually a little bit surprised because it's not for lack of innovation. There's been a lot of good technologies that have come out and have been successful. So far so good. I think people, particularly on the venture exchange, we're kind of a public venture story today. So, people can recognize that we're still pretty early on. We're getting the commercial engine rolling, but we've got a lot of really exciting, catalysts in front of us. So as we continue to validate and demonstrate the commercial model is successful with the S-Series, and then all of the great stuff we have around the AI pivotal study, I think the appetite gets stronger and stronger as we put some of those milestones behind us.
Now, you're still relatively early in this whole process. Running a company like this, I imagine, has a lot of, I'd say volatility, but challenges. What's the one challenge that sort of keeps you up at night, if there is one?
Yeah, I think, lots keep me up at night for sure. But I think, Let me take the low-hanging fruit. I think we've been able to weather, some of the storms pretty well. So our supply chain hasn't been that disrupted. So that's a good thing for us. I think probably first and foremost for me, it's making sure we are attracting and retaining the best talent possible to, get this technology to achieve its ultimate goal of impacting patients' lives. And, we're an early stage organization that there's a lot of big players in our space. And, fortunately, we have a mission that's easy to get behind, but we gotta, make sure, that we're accessing the top talent in this crazy labor market that we're all dealing with today. So.
Gotcha. And then what has you the most excited? Like, what are you the most looking forward to? And there's so many, seems like there's a number of different milestones and things that to look forward to, but what gets you the most jazzed right now?
Yeah, I would answer that twofold. So number one, if you had asked me, 12 months ago, 2 years ago, how the users of the S series would perform, I never would have imagined that they would be as effective as they've been. So these early commercial users, they're going from either, some of them started at 20 to 25%, some of them started at closer to 10%, and they're getting down into the 2 to 3%, early single digit reoperation rates. And I never would have told you that was going to be possible. So the technology is working better than I ever would have imagined. And then, maybe more forward looking, what the AI team is working on today is, it gets better and better every single day. So, our latest board appointment was a guy named Anantha Kanchela, who joined us. He's head of AI within Meta. So worked on driverless cars for Lyft, grew up in Microsoft from a product development perspective. So just bringing that wealth of expertise to our already strong medical imaging team has been lightning in a bottle for us. So the next couple of versions of the AI, I think, are just going to blow our users away.
Wow. Exciting for sure. We've kind of come to the end right now. What we always like to do is give you an opportunity to sort of give a key takeaway or a message you want to make sure that everybody walks away with today. What would that be?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the two things I just highlighted are definitely what I think people should be walking away with. Is one, we're out there commercializing and it's blowing expectations away. So the technology is actually improving patient outcomes and changing patients' lives. So that's first and foremost kind of state of the state today. And then, I think we've talked a lot about the near-term catalysts in front of us, and, we're super bullish about the commercial pipeline, the studies picking up enrollment, and we're excited about getting that over the line. And, getting that data is really going to help people price in the AI clearance and what that means. And then lastly, I'd be on the lookout for us demonstrating validation in the rest of the TAM. The breast cancers are beachhead market for a lot of reasons, but there's a big old market outside of that we're going after, and we're excited to see some of that materialize in the near future.
Fantastic. I always love businesses where not only can you make money, but you can do some real good. And in cases like this, you're saving lives and clearly doing good. We've been speaking with Jeremy Sobotta, CEO of Perimeter Medical Imaging AI. Jeremy, thanks for joining us today, and we certainly look forward to catching up and hopefully getting you after you meet one of these nice high milestones that you're working on.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.